Good evening, welcome. I think we're ready to start. Before housekeeping, if I can introduce myself, I know some people. I'm Camilla Proctor, one of the independent standard assessors, and now that we rotate the chair, it's my role for the next year. I'd like to record thanks to Variability, who undertook the role last year, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Basham, because I think it's the first time that you've attended standards.
That's correct.
Welcome. And welcome to those that I know because we've been here before. Thank you very much. Okay, housekeeping to start. Fire evacuation procedures for evening meetings. No fire alarm scheduled for this evening. So if the fire alarm sounds, we evacuate immediately, and the fire exit is located at the rear of the room, down the stairs, and we meet in the War Memorial Park. As you're aware, the meeting will be webcast, so we're live as of now. And if you haven't already done so, would you please either turn off your mobile phone or put it on silent? Thank you. Okay, we can begin. Apologies for absence and substitutions. We have a number of apologies this evening. Amanda Orchard, Verity Murakan, Councillor Howard Sorrell has also sent apologies, and Councillor Fryer has resigned as a Chinham Parish Councillor and therefore is no longer eligible to sit on the Standards Committee. Okay.
Oh, resigned. Sorry, I didn't.
You didn't hear me? Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Okay. No other apologies or substitutions. Moving on to item 2, appointment of the Vice Chair. As this is the first meeting, we need to make that appointment. I would like to ask for nominations for Vice Chair, please.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Butsy.
Sorry, you need to turn the mic off when you... Okay, so we have a nomination for Councillor Putty. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Putty, thank you very much. You are our Vice Chair for the year. That's it. So as that's agreed, thank you very much. And moving on, item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, urgent matters. Any urgent matters at this point? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March. Are the committee happy that the minutes of the meeting held on that date are an accurate record? I need to remind everyone that as only Martin Slatford and Linda Agnew were present, they're the only 2 councillors who can confirm the minutes.
Chairman, Chairman, I did give my apology. I was in Australia, and I tried to even connect on that day, and I couldn't really connect by my iPhone because I was told I cannot take my laptop with me. So please, I didn't really just ignored it. It was, I had really wanted to really join the meeting, but couldn't.
Thank you.
We didn't receive any apologies.
We'll note that. Thank you. Returning to the minutes. Thank you. So the minutes are agreed. Item 6, the government response to the Committee on Standards in Public Life, review of local government ethical standards. We have a report from Fiona which will provide us with an update, so I'd like to ask to hand over to Fiona to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This committee has spent the last 3 years or so considering the Committee on Standards in Public Life, review of local government ethical standards. During this time, we've considered the best practice recommendations coming out of the report and assessed our own practices against those, and we have considered the new Model Code of Conduct, which I'm happy to say was finally adopted by this Council in March this year. The missing piece has always been the government's response to those recommendations in the report, which required legislative change. So in March this year, the response was published, and in the report I've set out the results of that response. Out of the 22 recommendations, the government proposed to engage further in relation to 7 of those recommendations, and these are set out in paragraph 3.2 of the report. One of the main weaknesses of the current system raised in the review was the lack of teeth or sanctions, which can be imposed in cases where there has been a breach of the Code of Conduct. And you'll see in the response the government feel there are sufficient sanctions in terms of reputation and party discipline, but they are going to engage further to look at strengthening sanctions for breaches of the code, which they say fall below the bar of criminal activity, but which involve serious incidents of bullying and harassment or disruptive behaviour. Of the recommendations not to be taken any further, our parish colleagues will note that the parish councils are not going to be made to adopt the borough's code, so it's still down to each parish council to determine their code of conduct. So the report is for noting, and if and when there is any progress on these further actions, I will obviously report back.
Councillor Basham.
I did have one question, if I may. Recommendation 11 about indemnifying independent persons. I couldn't, being new to the committee, I couldn't see what Basingstoke and Dean does about that at the moment.
And I meant to check that up before I came tonight, and I didn't, so I'll come back to you on that. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Slimin.
Off, on. It's not coming on.
That's the one. You're on.
Okay. Can I just ask that I know that we wanted that all the parish councils and town councils in the area actually adopted the same code of conduct, which makes it much simpler that we make sure that everybody's got the same in case there are complaints. Have we had any of the parish and town councils saying that they won't join the new one, or obviously whether all of those are saying they're going to adopt it? Be interesting to know whether or not that is still going to be an issue for us.
Thank you. I wrote, once the council had adopted the code here, I did write to all the parish councils, giving them a copy of it and asking them if they were proposing to adopt it. They also offered them training on the back of that, so hopefully trying to persuade them to adopt it. I've only had 7 responses to say they've adopted it. I don't think that's the full picture, because I was looking at some websites today and they've obviously have adopted it but not notified me. So either I'll trawl through the websites or I will write to the remaining ones again, just to ask them what their position is on that, because I would like to roll out, and we'll come back to it later on, I think, but some training to the parish councils on the back of it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So we're recommending, or we're noting the report, aren't we? We're noting the report. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, the complaints update report. Again, over to Fiona to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see, fortunately, it's been quite a quiet period for complaints since the last meeting. At the last meeting, there were two matters which were still ongoing, and those have now been determined. And since the last meeting, we've received only 2 new complaints. One has been disposed of, and there is one still ongoing at the moment.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Moving on to item 8, the review of the work programme. We may want to have a discussion about training. Apologies, Councillor Sliman, I missed you.
Can I just ask if, I know we had the training online the other day for the borough councillors, and I was a bit disappointed we didn't get more. Comparatively 54 councillors, we get so many. So obviously people hopefully know what we're going to be doing. But I think obviously we did talk about whether we moved it forward. So I can't see when we're going to discuss it moving forward to parishes if they do indeed sign up to do that work. Or are we going to do it all by producing an e-learning package, which I know spoke about before?
Yeah, so I ran the first session a couple of weeks ago for borough councillors, and I am going to do a wash-up because I've had some contact from people who couldn't attend that session, and I'm going to trim the slide deck because it was rather overlong, I think. I've also started preparing a slide deck for parish councils, which is a much shorter version. And I was going to ask tonight really whether I think there may be some merit in me offering a Teams version of it, some training, but I also do still propose to produce an e-learning package. I've prepared the slides, and from that I can go and do the e-learning package. So I wondered actually from parish colleagues whether they think me offering a remote, training session would be helpful, or I just go for the e-learning package when I've finished it.
Thank you, Fiona. Comments would be welcome. Councillor Slatford?
The right-hand one. Is that working? Okay. I think there's a big issue with regard to adopting the new model code of conduct. I can't see any point in providing training on the new model code of conduct until we know who has adopted it. If we only have confirmation that 7 have adopted their variation of the model code of conduct, to try and provide training for the other 35 or so other councils, I think there is an issue here that until we have the message out that the new model code of conduct is simple enough to adopt, and that we find some way to sell that solution to both the clerks and the councils, I think there is a missing engagement here. That we really need to find some way that we can point out that the model code of conduct is a straightforward item. It is not complex, it is not tricky, it does not have elements that relate to employees in the way that the district council model has. So I think that the process has developed a simple, easily adopted code, which is similar, I believe, to that which NALC are promoting, and we need to find some way that we can get it adopted. Once it's adopted, it's understood and adopted by the sufficient of the parish and town councils, then I think the provision of training is absolutely critical if we're going to reduce the number of complaints. I also did a bit of homework on this, and that NALC are offering training. They have a course in October, which is being delivered by Hampshire Association of Local Councils. That's on the 19th of October. Now, it may be that having a national association reinforcing a provision of the standardised local government association model code of conduct for parish and town councils, we could get more adoptions. But I think that certainly the awareness of code of conduct and even the Nolan principles within parish councils, I believe, is very low and very poor, and so that is a key issue. Providing training to the converts is a waste of resources, I believe. The big issue is trying to engage with and get delivery by the parish councils.
Thank you. A lot in there, and I'm just wondering whether or not we want to tease any of that out, because I think there are a lot of really important things there. I really picked up on.
Oh, how do I turn it off?
We'll get there. I wanted to say thank you, because there was a lot there, and I really picked up on your thought about the need to sell it first. And I wonder if there are any other comments on whether or not that is what others feel, that there is a need to sell the code before training, or whether the thoughts are that there should be some general training to try and sell the code, because you can look at it in a number of ways. I just wonder, any thoughts?
I think you probably need to try and sell it first and try and explain the benefits of actually being on the Basingstoke and Dean Code of Conduct as opposed to the NALC one.
Any other thoughts? Thank you.
I wonder, Martin, whether the Basingstoke and District Town and Parish Council meeting has discussed this recently. Obviously, you've now got 2 vacancies on this group, unless you've appointed somebody to replace me already, and you've now got Councillor Fryer having stood down. Whether that might be an item for your meeting. I think still the difficulty of that is that people who attend that are normally people who are quite switched on and know what's going on. It's getting it to the wider community that perhaps don't attend that or anything else. So it'd be interesting to have a conversation with the Hampshire Association to see how they're promoting the work that they're doing, and see if they can give us some advice on things. There is usually a mailing that goes to clerks. I don't know how many clerks send it on to their parish councillors of, updates on what's happening now, but it might be that it could be included in something, information like that. Obviously, this covers the whole of Hampshire, not just the Basingstoke area, but I'm sure colleagues in other boroughs and district councils are probably having similar conversations as well.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on selling it? Because it does appear that that's something that at least 2 people feel it's really important. And any ideas on what that would look like?
Again, I think... Oh, sorry.
Go on.
That there's a query in my mind. How different is the Basingstoke variation of the parish council model code from that which is proposed by local government association and adopted by NALC, SLCC and Hampshire Association of Parish and Town Councils? Is there really a difference in that which is being proposed for Basingstoke from the national model code?
That was actually my question as well.
So Basingstoke have adopted the draft that the LGA produced. We haven't changed anything in it other than we put in a paragraph about cabinet members, I think, for the Basingstoke side of it. But that otherwise, it's word for word what the code is from the LGA.
Okay, thank you. So the first point is that the code of conduct that is being proposed to be adopted by parish and town councils is the bog standard national one. So therefore, training that is being provided on the national one would be exactly correct for each parish council that does not, I'm going to be politically correct, they don't mess around with it and change it. Because as we pointed out earlier, government were asked to make it mandatory that it was adopted as a standard. That has not been granted. So therefore, each parish could mess it around and change the tenor, which makes it very difficult for a standards committee to investigate complaints. So the key element is to sell the concept of the National Code of Conduct to each of the parish and town councils. To pick up on Joe's point, that should be done through the Basingstoke and Districts Association of Parish and Town Councils, which has not met now for some time. It is scheduled to have a meeting in September, which will be the annual general meeting, which is normally in June of the year. So the annual general meeting would appoint the representatives to replace Joe and Les Fryer, and to confirm that Linda and Martin remain as representatives. We recognised at a previous meeting that the timing of the appointments from the District Association to this committee did not tie up with the timings for the full council. But I note that there is a council meeting in October at which appointments from September could be ratified.
Thank you. And any other comments? Because the message coming through is still the importance of actually selling the code. We've not really spoken about how, but that's the message that I'm hearing. Any comments on what actions or activities would be most appropriate in order to persuade?
They'll have the meetings with the clerks that they used to have. Because that was always a way of getting the message out to the clerks. Because after all, parish and town councils operate via usually one person who actually provides the information to the councillors. So if the clerks were to be allowed to come to asked to come to a meeting where it was actually promoted to them and asking them to promote it to their councillors, that may be a way forward. But there used to be quite a lot of, several meetings of clerks a year where information was shared. Obviously, everything with COVID, I know, has changed because, you know, that's just the way it is. But it used to be quite useful to share lots of information to the clerk so that they could actually be aware of what was happening at the borough. So it may be that it might be something that needs to be looked at with other groups of people in the council to actually promote the work that the borough is doing with the town and parish councils as well. But that's a thought, there's a process there that used to work with things that needed to come forward to be adopted.
Thank you. I think that's a useful idea. Any other comments on ways forward? And that's a very practical suggestion. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is that actually worth extending out to the chairman of the parish councils? Because then if you can persuade them, they may be able to actually tell their clerks.
Thank you. So we have...
sorry, I think there's an important point here, that is that the engagement with parishes was through the clerks and through the chairs and representatives. So the chairs and representatives was through the BDA-PTC. The relationship with the clerks was through the clerks' meetings. The clerks' meetings seem to be disconnected by the councillor responsible for engagement with parishes. So I think that the clerks' meetings for some reason didn't happen, they were discontinued, but I will state that the clerks who went to those meetings probably will be the 7 councils that have adopted the model code, because it was a select group who could meet in the daytime. The clerks' meetings were daytime. A number of clerks have full-time jobs and work at evenings, so there was a disparity between those clerks who were able to come to Basingstoke to a daytime meeting and those who could not and wanted an evening meeting. So the active clerks managed to get it to be a day meeting, so therefore the potential of having some of the part-time or less professionally qualified clerks to come to the day meeting was a challenge. So we do need, as a council, we being Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council, do need to have this engagement with all the parish and town councils in a way that seems to be being lost. I don't think it was just COVID. I think it was happening before that, but it is something that is probably outside the remit of this committee, but that engagement is really important to maintain the strengths of partnership between the two. Sorry, I'm talking far too much.
Thank you, that's helpful. If I can sum up before we move on to look at other items in the work programme, what I think I've heard is that we need to find a way to engage with the parishes, and we need to think about when training takes place, but engagement comes first, however we do it. Thank you.
That's actually something I've noticed on even NOUT courses and people like that, that a lot of the training is done during the day when some people can't get there.
Thank you. I think we should note that, because it's been mentioned previously, if training is only offered during the day, it will mean that a number of people couldn't attend. Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick update on that one. The next one, which is organised by NALC, delivered by Hampshire Association of Local Councils, is a 7 p.m. meeting. So they've noted that one.
Yeah. Is that the 19th of October meeting that you mentioned? Moving on to look at other aspects of the work programme. Fiona, can I ask if there are any comments that you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that there's a lack of items, agenda items at the moment for the November. We've done quite a lot of the big pieces of work over the last year in terms of the code and the complaints process. So I'm looking for ideas. If anybody's got any suggestions for some work items, that would be very helpful. And just to put on the programme that we'll be coming to more recruitment, but that's not till early next year. So if anybody has any suggestions, I'm all ears.
Any comments or suggestions for the work programme?
I don't think we should be despondent that there aren't too many things that we've got to discuss. I know, because obviously we've got the new code of conduct, so some of the issues that we raised, by November there might be some updates on some of those anyway, maybe, who knows. The government moves extremely slowly these days, unfortunately. So if there's something there that we can discuss, some of the items that have been still being looked at, that may be there. So I suppose that's really probably the most likely thing. And obviously, an update on where we are with the training would be useful. By that time, we might even have some thoughts about how we've managed to engage with parishes. And for my colleague here, because I've got two hats on and I'm also still a parish and town councillor, it would appear that we've taken over the meeting. But most of our complaints, unfortunately, are from the parish sector. So it is important that we do try to get the message out about what parish and town councils should or shouldn't do and what the code of conduct means for them. It is very important that they do understand what the code is all about and therefore try and reduce the number of complaints that we have to deal with.
Thank you. And note both of those points, that perhaps by the 14th of November we may have a number of updates with regard to training and engagement. Sorry.
John. Yeah, apologies if I'm overstepping the mark, but I mean, there's obviously a balance between carrot and stick here. I presume parish councillors have some sort of swearing in process, or some sort of, and that surely refers to a code of conduct.
Sure.
If it doesn't, then I don't know what powers we have to change the swearing in if it doesn't, but it should. This stuff just strikes me as mandatory. I mean, I completely understand that we have to encourage people to attend, but people should treat it. I can't quite believe people don't treat it with the highest priority.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not able to comment on the mandatory status. Fiona, can you help?
My understanding is you still sign a declaration of office like the borough councillors, don't you, on the parish councils? So presume that's also says, like the borough one, that you accept the terms of the code of conduct?
Yes, you sign a code of conduct saying that you agree to the code of conduct as adopted by the council. But if your council hasn't adopted the same one that we're talking about, you're still adopting a code of conduct that may or may not have all the things in there. Just thinking quickly about some of the examples that we may have come across, is potentially about harassment or bullying or things like that that might be not included in some of the ones that have been adopted previously. So it would be good to have something that encompassed everything that was the most modern, up-to-date one. But by signing up as a councillor, you are agreeing to their code of conduct, but not necessarily to the same one as us.
Thank you. Any further comments on that?
Yeah, sorry. So it's me again. The signing in of councillors has much less weight within a parish council than it does within the district council. The parish councils, I don't know all, but I think the majority do not provide the initiation training course for new councillors. We've got a lot of new councillors who come along from the May elections this year, but there is no standard training for councillors as to how to behave as a councillor. There are no training courses that I'm aware of that are being run by the county association, which is where I had my basic training a million years ago. So the process of providing training, as well as providing compliance with the code of conduct, because one of the first things within the code of conduct says that the councillor accepts they will have training. And if you have not adopted the code of conduct, the latest one, then you're not signing up to say that the code of conduct requires that the councillor has training in compliance with the code of conduct. So we've got a huge number of holes here. The first and most important thing is training and adoption of a code of conduct, the code of conduct, not variations. And I think that as a standards committee, we should be strongly promoting the adoption of the code of conduct that has been reviewed by the standards committee with representatives from parish and town councils to go back with the strongest support of the district association to each parish. we have missed the mayor's annual meeting, sponsored by the mayor, which brings together all of the parish and town councils for several years, predates COVID. That could be a means of making sure that we get this cleaner engagement between the borough and the parishes. I can't overemphasise this point.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor.
Once again, excuse my naivety, but am I right in understanding that this forum has some form of governance over all of these parish and town councils? It does not. Okay. I was just curious as to if we were expected to be moderating them in some shape or form. Surely we can mandate the policy, but obviously not.
You'll find that local authorities at parish and town councils have their own mandate, just as they can't mandate us at the borough. But there should be some way of actually engaging and encouraging people to all keep the same thing. And they're still supposed to keep to the standards that Nolan had set. And, you know, you would expect that. So if there is a complaint, they are to accept that those are the cases if they've adopted the code of conduct, and they need to be aware that that's what they are adopting. But as Martin said, it's always dependent on new councillors to go on induction if any is run. I believe that there was some run. Some of our new councillors at Chadley, I know, attended some of the training, but they may have fallen by the wayside again. But again, that is something that isn't forced upon them. They don't have to do it. It isn't mandatory. They can choose to go on training if they wish to. So again, we've always got the same issue. I mean, there's supposed to be mandatory training for some of our committees here, and obviously people don't go on it. Presumably we can say, well, you're not allowed to come on the committee, you haven't done the training. It doesn't quite work at parish and town council level, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor.
I may have misunderstood, but Appendix 1 on the paper before, we had a list of four complaints, all of which relate to parish councils or parish councillors. So are those, and I appreciate there's a timing difference here with the new code coming in, but in principle, are all of those 4 complaints, are they all governed by our code of conduct, or are they governed by potentially four different codes of conduct?
The latter is my understanding.
So, again, apologies, why do they come here? If they're not our code of conduct, why do they come here?
Fiona's going to respond. Thank you.
So it's the role of the monitoring officer for the principal authority to undertake the complaints process in relation to parish complaints as well as borough councillors. So that's within my orbit. So it's useful if we get the training done because it reduces the amount of work for the monitoring officer.
If you wanted to mandate a single code of conduct, Fiona, I would support that.
Unfortunately, not within my gift, I don't think.
Thank you. I think the message of the committee is very clear. Lots in there from initiation training, what's mandatory, what's not, and what I'm hearing is that we are all agreed that commonality would help everyone. I think we're also agreed that we need to find a way to engage and persuade and promote the benefits of all working to the same code. So I hope I've sort of taken the sort of what you've said. I think that's what we're saying as a committee. Any more comments on that? Any further comments on the remaining agenda items in the work programme? No additions. Okay, thank you. Moving on, that's item 8. Item 9, exclusion of press and public not applicable, and also item 10, confidential and exempt items, not applicable. Any further comments?
May I inquire, I'm not sure if this is the right moment, but as the point that has been raised about complaints that have been handled, of the complaints that have been handled, how many have a different code of conduct which is being applied and is therefore taking time for the monitoring officer or the people checking to see whether in fact the complaint is genuine against the code of conduct that has been adopted in that case. Sorry, it's very badly put. Start again. Where we have complaints, are the code of conducts, is there a variability in the code of conduct which is causing the monitoring officer and team difficulties historically?
I can't say how out of the number of complaints we've had, how many have different codes of conduct, but they are, and that's the first thing obviously we check when we're dealing with a complaint, is to check which code of conduct applies. Some of them are very short indeed, so you're quite limited with what you're looking at. I think even one didn't have the Nolan principles in it, so it varies a lot, but yeah, it takes a bit of time. If you know if you deal with the code of conduct which is adopted by this council all the time, things are speedier. You're not having to go and look and see what the code of conduct for the parish is, but it takes some time.
Any further comments? If there are no further comments, the meeting's closed, and I'd like to thank you for your attendance and contributions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.